I'm going to be working on the electrical system in my 95 Chevy K1500. I've kind of noticed that the gauge has been dropped down, which I know it's not that accurate. I'll test the voltage coming out of the alternator and it's showing 14 and a half. I'll test the voltage coming out of the battery, same thing. But inside the cab I've got a little cigarette lighter volt reader, and it shows about 12 volts. 11.9 to 12.6 is the highest I've seen, and it's supposed to be at the same as the charging system. So while I was messing around in here, these wires here that were in there, this bigger one was barely hanging on, and it's not really in there too well anyway now. Oh, not at all. That's cool. But it's not clamping down on it enough, so it's not getting there's good enough power to it. So whenever I was messing around with it, it ended up changing my volts in there. Now it's reading 14 volts inside the cab. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to use some of these here. I'm going to take my side post battery and add these to them, because I hate side posts anyway. I'm going to use these on the positive and negative. I'll keep the original positive wire that goes down to the starter. I'll keep the original negative wire that goes to the block. It should be right behind the intake, I think, back there somewhere. And I'm going to attach them to these in here. Then I'm going to add some of this. I'll just cut this end off. This is just what they had. And I'm going to add a new negative wire, new negative cable that'll connect to the other end of this. And I think it's either going to go to the frame or the body. I'm not sure which. And then I'm going to do basically the same with the positive, and I'll add a new wire right here that'll end up going to that fuse box over there. But what I'll probably end up doing is I'm going to take this wire here, which is not very thick at all, and it runs down and up through here into this, I believe. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to shove that back in there, I guess. Yeah, that's good. But I'm basically just going to, instead of have two wires, this wire here going to the fuse box, and then this wire down here, the smaller one going to the alternator, I'll have a bigger one going to the alternator to here, and then I'll also have another wire onto here, onto the post on the alternator, going to the fuse box. Shouldn't be a problem doing that. I don't see how there could be. It's basically the same thing. It's all going to the battery anyway. And this is what I'm going to do it with. I've got these for adding ends onto these or whatever and making it work. And then eventually I'm going to add in another ground. You can see back here, hopefully. I don't know if you can or not. There's a tiny ground strap that connects. And I'm going to probably add some of this wire. I'm going to have a body to frame, and then probably another frame to engine ground, and that should help out a lot. But this right here is definitely not doing anything. So I'm going to go ahead and get to doing that. This is what I ended up with. So I've got this one here. I kept the original small wire there, and I just spliced it into the wire that was already attached to this on one side of it for the negative. I also kept this one, the stock one that goes up by the intake. I added this one in that goes down and connects to the frame right there, and I just found that bolt, which just how happens to be the one for the positive that goes to the starter, and then cleaned it up and bolted it down there. Hopefully that doesn't catch on fire. On the positive side, basically the same thing. The wires that I did have here, I ended up splicing them together there, and then I crimped it into this wire that was already attached to this. One of the wires is the original one that goes down and to the starter, because it's pretty thick wire anyway, and the other one is the one that I had taken new, moved it back to here to the alternator, And then also on the other side of the alternator, I have the wire going back to the fuse box. The old wire ran above the radiator and over there, and then there was another wire that ran from the alternator to the battery. I don't think that's going to be a problem. The only thing that I do need to do is get a fuse for the alternator, because on the old wire, this was the old alternator wire, and it did have a maybe that isn't a fusible link. Well, if this is a fusible link, then it's definitely seen better days. I don't know if that is or not. I would assume it is, because I know on a lot of vehicles they have them, but maybe not. But as you can see, this wire was the wire for the alternator, very small. And this is the wire that I added into it. A lot better, a lot bigger. So whenever I turn my turn signal on and the it dips, drops down the voltage every time the turn signal clicks, that should stop. After all this crap, which all I did is just went to Walmart and bought it, probably could get the wire cheaper and do this all yourself, get this little connector here and everything, but I just wanted to see if it would work basically. And I didn't need it, but watching the volts drop every time the turn signal clicks is not really supposed to happen. So hopefully this will fix it. I also did replace the alternator. I had one sitting around that was a warranty, and I just, well, guess today would be the perfect time to put it on, so I threw it on. But I will need to get a fuse for the power wire that goes to the alternator, just in case. I'll just see however many amps my alternator is, and I'll pick that up here in a minute, but didn't get around to doing that. Hopefully this fixes some of my problems. After everything, I did have a 51-inch 4-gauge wire from Walmart and a 72-inch 4-gauge wire, and everything that I have left is just this one wire, which will work perfectly for getting some other ones of these connectors, these eyelets, attaching it to both ends, and I can attach from the frame to the engine, or I could go frame to body. I'm not sure which one I'm going to do. I probably need to do both of them, so I might still have to get another little section of 4-gauge wire. It wouldn't hurt to do both. I know that those ground straps are tiny, and a lot of people have had problems with them, so it wouldn't hurt to make a bigger one. Yeah, so this is hopefully this works, and it should improve a lot of things, I hope, with the charging system. This is me testing out the turn signals. Doesn't move anywhere near as much as it did. With the hazards on, it actually moves even less. And then if I turn the air on, it drops down a bit and then it goes right back up. AC on, everything. So I'll take that. I'm still going to add in probably 1 or 2 more grounds from the body to the probably from the body to the frame, and then from the frame to the engine, and that'll probably help out some, but I'm definitely happy. These are my volts right here. That new alternator I put on was from my 91 Chevy C1500 V8 engine. Everything was the same basically. Thought it would work. I put it in and it showed 12 volts. It showed 12 volts at the gauge here, 12 volts at the gauge down there, 12 volts at the battery, and 12 volts at the alternator with it running. So I looked that up, and apparently that alternator does not work with this truck, which is just a 95 K1500 V8. I don't know why. The numbers match. It's just a remanufactured one. The new one from O'Reilly's with the same numbers, just with the first letter being N, will work for my truck, but with the first letter being R, it will not work. So I swapped to my other alternator, the one that was on here before, and now I've got the 14.5 volts all around. So I don't know what that's about, but at least it's charging and it's working better than what it was, so I'm fine with that.